Hi, we are back.
Yes, and we're talking about such a great topic today. Uh, you know, we speak a lot about how work gets done and where it gets done and what's optimal for that. And I think, you and I are both a proponent of what's often referred to as kind of a work-life balance. But we recently read a great article on this concept of laziness in relationship to a lot of people like Darwin, for instance, that we revere as being prolific in what they produced in over the course of their lives. And so when we really look at the habits and work behaviors of some of our greatest thinkers, it's really enlightening to realize how much time they dedicate not just to quote unquote doing work, but to thinking and being in nature and to exploring other topics as well. And that actually makes them more productive in their work.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I mean, the article was kind of focused on Darwin and how he how and when he did his most creative work, and I think it's right now it's really interesting what's happening, right? Because Silicon Valley, as we both know, has this culture of you have to be working weekends and nights and working all the time and working. But I think you and I both know people that have worked for numerous startups, not just in the Bay Area, but startups in general, where the first thing out of their mouths is, oh, I can't stand the endless 4-hour meetings. We go into the conference room, we don't come out all day, and no actual work gets done, right? So it's like the and I think that happens a lot in the enterprise too. It's so startups, as much as they like to think of themselves as being different and cooler and edgier than the enterprise, also have a lot of these same traits, which are really just byproducts or an evolution of the existing enterprise or corporate mindset of how and when work gets done.
Yeah, and studies show that there is a tipping point where if you work over a certain number of hours per week, you actually are not more productive. And so finding your sweet spot depending on what it is you're doing and what it requires. So certainly, like if you take writing, for example, sitting and writing for 18 hours a day is probably not going to make you more prolific or produce better work than if you wrote for, say, 6 hours a day. Uh, because
Right.
you do kind of tap out at a certain point with various activities, and you have to refuel no matter what you're doing. And we all refuel differently, but some modicum of fresh air, of new ideas, of social exchange. I mean, those are kind of the fundamental basics of what humans refuel with. And also what makes the work that you're producing stronger, because it helps you to fuse together ideas and piece together disparate threads in a different way than if you were just sitting there staring at your work for
Hmm. Yeah, right. And I think this kind of ties into the thread that we've been kind of on here for a couple of weeks now with what does the workplace look like, and do you need to commute to an office, and what's the logic behind having somebody come to one place to sit there all day, and you assume that their most productive time generating real meaningful work is going to be done at that desk, or their best ideas are going to be around a water cooler. But if they're not in a place where they can reach that state mentally to kind of be open and
Mhm.
creative, then chances are you're probably not getting the best work out of them.
Well, and that goes back to the concept of flow also. And we tend to reach flow for 45 minutes to an hour and a half at a time. And much beyond that, the efficacy, the productivity starts to wane. And so even if we're breaking our day up into those chunks, it is better than saying, all right, I'm just going to have 8 hours where this is all I'm doing. Now, certainly there are moments where we feel we have momentum and we have a lot of energy when we go into that. But I think on an everyday basis, thinking in chunks of flow and how we can capture that and what we need to do in between those intervals to top ourselves up is really important.
Yeah, and I think it's just really interesting. I mean, the article struck me as fascinating because the word slacker was put in the title, right? And that's kind of clickbait, but it's also interesting that they use that word because it has a negative connotation, right? And when you pair that with somebody like Darwin, who, you know, we historically we look back and we say, wow, look, you know, the groundbreaking work that he did. And you also kind of think about this machismo culture of, you know, I've got to work 18 hours a day to, you know, do what I need to do. People who don't work that much are often referred to as slackers, right? So if you're in a startup and you're not putting in the weekend hours, then you're a slacker and you must not be doing great work. It's just really interesting that somebody who's working smarter and not harder is kind of put in that bucket where maybe that's not necessarily the case.
Well, and of course, the enthusiasm for this concept is what we might attribute the rise of Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week as well. Is that it's kind of the dream, even though I would argue Tim Ferriss has never worked only 4 hours a week in his entire life.
Right.
That's another topic. But it's about working smarter and also working on things that bring you joy. So I think any given work day or work week, you allocate time to, you know, what is your current deliverable? What is your immediate project? But also imagining the what ifs of where that might take you or what your next project might be, or starting conversations with people that you might collaborate with and making space for all of that. And some of that might look like slacking off.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah, so
let us know how you slack off. Let us know if you do, or, you know, maybe you have an argument for an 8-hour workday with no play in between. Yeah. We'd love to hear that from you as well. But I think this is a really important issue, and one that not only entrepreneurs and people who work solo or freelance need to have with themselves, but it's a dialogue that can be happening internally within organizations. So how can you keep the enterprise intact while still also allowing this space for real autonomy and individuality and a recognition that we don't all work the same way? So we want to hear your thoughts, so please leave them in the comments, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.